So after lists, we are going to check about forms. So form is very important HTML tag in HTML5. So form is basically used to retrieve information from the user. So you must have seen the username and password fields. So these are nothing but the forms, or the registration pages that we see commonly are nothing but the forms. So forms are used to collect inputs from the user, and it contains special elements like input box. So this is one input box. Then we have radio buttons for user to select his gender, let's say male and female. And then we have check boxes, okay, let's say MCA or BE or something like that. So especially when you have multiple options, then you can use check boxes when a user can select a particular item. And in case of radio buttons, so only one option can be selected. Okay, so this is for in a single option needs to be selected, and this is for multiple options. Okay, then we have submit button. So whenever the form gets filled, okay, so inside of that form you'll have a submit button. So once user clicks on that particular submit button, so page will be submitted, as in all this information that user has entered in will be submitted to the server. Okay, so server internally can redirect user to the same form or to the new specified page. Okay, so that information that is being sent technically gets directed to the new page or the same page itself. Okay, now this is defined with the help of action attribute in the form tag. Okay, so here are the attributes. So name is the name of the form. Action is used to specify the URL where the information will be sent or where the information will be submitted via the form. And then we have method. So it is the method using which the data can be sent. It can be get or post. So get is something that the form data gets added into the URL. So let's say your page name is, let's say, xyz.php, then a question mark will be added to it, and then your form data will be added here, something like this. So this will be the variable name. Okay, so name tag, and whatever the value user has specified, so that value will be here. And in case your form has multiple data, then using the ampersand, the second pair will be sent. Okay, so this is how the get data would be, and post data is not sent in the query, okay, or it is not sent as a part of the URL, but it is sent in the page itself in the header tag. Okay, so advantage of post method is that the data is not directly visible to the user, and disadvantage of get method is that the information is clearly visible in the URL. Okay, so post is the most preferred method, but there could be some instances wherein you can use get method as well. Additional attribute which is not often used is the target element. It is just similar to the ahref. You can specify when the user clicks on submit button, the new form page can be opened in the same browser window, or it can open a new one. So all these attribute values are almost similar to ahref. Okay, one important attribute is encoding type, that is enctype. So this specifies how data should be encoded when we are submitting to the server or to the new page. Okay, and this can be used only when we have method as post. Okay, so these are the attributes related to enctype. So application slash xww form URL encoded. So this is the default one. Okay, so even if you don't specify, this attribute value will be considered. Okay, what it does is it encodes all characters and then it sends to the server. Okay, so why encoding is needed? So your data could be having data like this, let's say Prashant space Chaudhary. Okay, so this space can create some problem. Okay, so this space can get converted to a plus sign, so your data will be sent as Prashant plus Chaudhary. Okay, and in case your data has some special character, let's say ampersand or greater than, okay, which are technically part of your HTML codes as well, because ampersand gets used in the query string values, plus, less than, and greater than sign are basically part of your HTML code too. So these kind of special characters gets converted into its proportion hex value. So on the server side, when you're going to process this information, you are required to decode these values again. Okay. But this makes sure that there are no slippages with the data and your data gets correctly transferred to the server. And then we have multi-part form data. This is generally not recommended because it does not encode any character. Okay, but these can be also used in case you are working on some really complex data. So in such cases, when you are working on large amount of content data, in those cases you might require this attribute value to be used. And finally, we have text slash plain. So this converts spaces into plus symbols, but special characters are not converted. Okay. So when you're sure that there won't be any special characters entered in your text box or your text area, in that case you can use it, but you need to also ensure that the special characters are not allowed to be sent to the server. And that can be done using validations, either using JavaScript or jQuery or anything like that. Then we are going to talk about input element, because for form to work you require some input elements. So these are fairly common input elements like a text box, password field. So text box is nothing but general text box that we have seen in the earlier slide for username. So when you enter password should not be shown to the user. Okay, so all the input that user is entering will be replaced with the star. Okay, so this is password field. Then we have checkbox, okay, like this. Then we have radio button, and then we have file control. When user clicks on this select button, so it will open file dialog box and user can select the file that can be sent to the server. Then we have one hidden input type. So hidden does not display anything on the screen, but there could be instances wherein you're required to send some information on the web page. Okay, and that information can be used via a certain script, and certain operation can be performed over there. Okay, for example, you can send users certain information into the hidden tags. Then you have select tag. So you must have seen the drop down buttons. Okay, so this is your select tag, and inside that whatever the list that we see is basically part of option tag. Okay, so this could be option 1, option 2. And then finally we have text area, a normal text area that we use to store addresses. Okay, or you can even write it to write large amount of paragraph text. Okay, so the difference between text area and text box is that it is single line and this is multi-line. Okay, and then finally you have a button. Okay, so this button is not your submit button, it's just a general button. Okay, so let's say on click on this certain button, you are required to perform a particular action. So that button can be used. You can specify the text that you want on this button. And finally we have submit button. Okay, so this basically submits your information to the server. So whatever value user has entered into these fields can be submitted to the server. And we have a reset button as well. Okay, so reset basically gives opportunity to the user to reset all the information that he has entered on the given form. One important attribute that we need to be sure of is the name attribute. Okay, so whatever attribute value that we give to the name attribute, okay, so that value will be sent to the server. Okay, so when I say let's say I have this field, I am setting the name as let's say user underscore name. Okay, and then I'm entering value Prashant. Okay, so the value or the information that will be sent to the server would be user underscore name equal to Prashant. Okay, so this name technically acts as a variable name and that can be consumed by the server. Okay, so in order to retrieve this information, you'll require this name. Then in HTML5, they have added a few more important input elements. So date time local basically gives you opportunity to select date and time at the same time. Then you have separate date field wherein you can select the date. Then you can select month, week and time using these input types. Then we have number. Okay, so this gives you opportunity to create a step counter. Okay, so something like this. Okay, So it gives you opportunity to create something like this. Okay, and you can set the minimum and maximum value. So let's say you have set 10 and 20, and you can set the step counter as 2. So your values will be ranging from 10 to 20 with the increments of 2. Okay, so 10, 12, 14, 15, sorry, 16, 18, and 20. These are possible values. Then you have email field, which can be used to specify user's email, and this can be used to specify any HTML URL. Okay, so these are can be directly used, and validation can be performed by the browser itself. We don't need to write any code to check whether user has entered certain value there or not. It even checks whether the validation is correct or not. So in case of email, it will ensure that you can just randomly write anything, and the page gets submitted. It will check whether the @ is there, or in case you have added space, so it will give you an error. So we'll check that in the live example. And then you have URL. You can have color code, so this will give you a color picker using which you can select a certain color. And then you have range field, so it will give you dragger, a drag button, something like this. So you can have some minimum value here, maximum value here, and then user can drag this handle from left to right or right to left. Then you have search keyword and tail keyword as well. So these are again to specify the telephone number and search keyword. So these are new HTML input elements that HTML5 has added, which has simplified creation of form variables. So now let us try to create a simple form with the information that we have so far. So let us try to understand the concept of forms using one example. So let me create one new file. Okay, I'm going to call this file as forms.html. Okay, I'm creating my HTML template. Okay, adding some title here, forms. So let us say I'm creating one h1 tag. Okay, example, and then I'm creating a form. So inside of form, I'm going to just start writing all the tags that we have seen. So let us say this is a registration form. Okay, so I'm saying registration, and then I'm going to write, let's say, name, then input type text. When I write, then it will give text control. So let me just try these are rendering here or not. Forms.html, let me, yeah, so say refresh. So this has got rendered, and then let's say we add one field for passwords, and then we just need to change the type here as passwords. Okay, so when I refresh, so this field has come up here. So if you just notice, okay, this extra s is there. So when I just type here, so this dots are coming instead of normal text. And then let us ask user his gender. So here we will require radio button. So I'm going to call this as radio. Okay, and then I'm just going to write male. Okay, and then I'm just going to add one more field, female. So now these things are coming just next to one another. So I'm going to add a BR tag. So here it is, and after this, let's say I'm going to add languages known, and for this I'm going to create checkbox. Okay, so here let's say I'm writing English, and then Marathi and Hindi. Okay, so I've added these three options. Okay, so if you notice, when I select on this radio buttons, they are still not somehow working correctly. Okay, so to solve that, what we need to ensure that name field is filled up for these radio buttons, and it needs to be common between these two radio buttons. So that is the only way browser will know that this particular radio button belongs to a certain group. Okay, so let me just so I just added few spaces to for clear reading, and then if you just notice this name tag over here, so I'm just going to write, let's say, gender over here. Okay, when I refresh here, so if we just toggle between this, now this is working properly. Okay, another thing is when we click on this female or this male text, it is not getting selected. For in order to that to work, what we need to just use is label field. Okay, this is one tag that we did not discuss, but it's very common tag. Okay, so when I just write our input type radio and text mail inside of a label. Okay, so when I click on this text, even the radio button will get selected. Okay, so this is one small little hack that we can use. So when I refresh and when I click on this, so you can see that it is working here. So now in case of checkbox, it is not happening. So the similar thing we need to do over there as well. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this. Okay, select Alt 3 lines so I can paste it directly there. Okay, and also I'm going to the end of each sentence and then I'm just going to paste. Okay, so even with this, it has started working here. So if you notice, I'm able to select multiple options here. Okay, so we have completed radio buttons and checkbox. So now let us continue with other input attributes. So we have seen checkbox, radio. Now let us see how we can add a file. So I'm just going to copy this, and so this is lesson not required for now, and I'm just going to write file. Okay, let's say I'm going to say upload resume. Okay, so this will show a file select dialog once I click on this part. Okay, so again let me add one BR tag here. Okay, so this thing is not required. Okay, so after this, in case we require some kind of hidden information, so we can use hidden. Okay, and for this we can use value attribute. Okay, and then specify some value, let's say some encrypted value that which represents user's ID. Okay, so let me just again remove this part. So if you notice, nothing has been displayed over here. Okay, but if you just view source of this page, so you will find this value here. Okay, this value is basically inside of your HTML code. Okay, but this value can be accessed using JavaScript. That is something that we'll check when we are going to learn about JavaScript. Okay, so for now I'm closing this, and alright, so we completed hidden tag as well. So now let us try to add one drop down box. So to add a drop down box, I need to create select as the main tag, and then inside that I can write options. Okay, so I can create multiple options like this. So I can write 1, 2, 4, or let's say I'm just writing 10, 20, 30, 40, or I can specify a range as well. Let's say 10 to 20. Then so let me just update these values quickly here: 30, 40, and 50. Okay, so let us just call this as years of experience. Okay, so you can see that this drop down has appeared over here. Okay, and you can also create option groups. Okay, this is very important tag, but very rarely used. So you can write opt group. Okay, so to group these options, we need to create one opt group tag, and we can use the label as, let's say, range. Okay, and all these option we need to put inside of that option group. Okay, so op group stands for option groups. Okay, and once this is done, okay, let us try to refresh this. Okay, so you can see this option group has got created. We can create one more group. Okay, and let's say I don't know, I'm going to call let's say small range, or maybe fix. Okay, and then I'm just going to remove these values. Okay, and just something like this. Okay, so when I refresh, okay, so you notice this is something that has happened. We have created two options and a range. So there are basically two option groups, and there are 4 different options inside of those option groups. And another important thing, sometimes we may require a default option. Okay, so what we can do is we can just write something like this. Let's say select. Okay, because it was the first option that has got automatically selected. Okay, so when I refresh, the select has appeared over here. Okay, and in case you want certain option to be selected when the page loads, so this is required some pre-filled values for a select option. Okay, so you can write selected as the default option. Okay, and that value will get selected every time the page loads. Okay, so this was for select and opt groups and the option tag. Okay, now we'll finally check a button tag and submit tag and then a reset tag. Okay, so we have a button. Okay, so let's say I'm calling let's say check data. The buttons are rarely used unless you have some JavaScript integrations with them. So it is just a button, okay, and maybe you can call certain action based on this. So action as an event we are going to check in the upcoming videos. So for now, just remember the button is a separate tag, okay, that can be used as the input control. And then we have input type reset, okay. So once you have this reset, okay, whenever you have some form data filled up and in case user changes mind to reset all the fields, so it will reset everything, as in it will remove all the data that has been typed in by the user, okay. And finally we have input type submit, okay. So this is important element, okay. Let me just add br tags, okay. So this is the important button. So your form data basically gets sent when you click on the submit button, okay. So if you notice at the top, the forms are getting submitted, okay. Now only thing is that we have not specified the method over here. So by default it is post, so we can write action and method tags. So method, let's say I'm writing get, okay. And here if you don't mention any action and if you don't mention any specific page, so page will get resubmitted to itself, page data will be resubmitted to itself, or otherwise you can specify URL of some other page, okay. So because now I have specified the method as get, okay, I need to specify the names as well here. So let's say I'm writing name, password, okay. So these are the values that will be used by the page, okay. So when I click on submit, so if you notice, the values are sent empty, reason being I have not selected anything, okay. So if I select certain values, let's say Prashant, and let's say password as XYZ or whatever, and then I'm selecting these attributes. So when I submit, okay, in the URL, if you notice, the some value has been sent to this page, okay. So the plus is added because of standard encoding, okay. And finally, I think I just forgot to add one common control, that is text area, okay. So this is nothing but your address. So I'm just adding one br tag, okay, and just specifying address, okay. So that is all. So this text area gets added, and there are few attributes like max length. These are associated with the text area. So max length is applicable to your text box, okay. So let's say we have created a field as, let's say, username, okay, and your system needs to have, let's say, maximum length of, let's say, 10. So you can specify that, okay. And when you're going to write here, so it won't block you after 10th character, okay. Similarly, in text area you can specify a number of rows, okay, that is maximum 3 rows will be allowed, okay. Okay, so br tag has somehow come inside of your text area, okay. So this is one idea that you can get. You can specify some predefined values inside of text area like this, okay. So this is the pre-filled values, okay. So let's say 1 2 3, okay. So rows is basically going to display number of rows, so 1 2 and 3, okay. So if I just extend it, I can write 5, okay. So if you just check that the height of this text area has got increased. Similarly, you can specify columns too with tag calls. Let's say I'm writing 100, okay. So it has increased the width, okay, of your text area column, okay. So basically calculates the character width and then adjusts itself. So these are very common tags that we have in HTML inputs. So we are going to look for other more attribute values like date time, date, local time, email, URL, color range, etc. So these are tag values which are added into HTML5 recently.